Do you know what she's doing?
Yep. Is she paying attention? No.
Does Justin know what he's doing?
Yeah.
Hello? Oh, good. Thank you.
Paying attention? No.
All right, so our tech is currently at the hands of Natalie and Justin, so I'm giving them a minute. You guys good? Okay. So we were passing out copies of the agenda. Hopefully everybody has one or your neighbor has one and you can share. There's also a few copies of the annual report being passed around. All of this stuff was available online, so hopefully everybody's had a chance to look at it. I'm giving the people in the back just a minute to finish grabbing snacks and come in if they want to. Okay, they're all looking at me like I'm crazy. Like, you guys can come in. No, they're not. Okay, I think we're good. Bonnie, are you ready? Okay, we're going to reposition our recorder so she can better hear.
Dawn, do you want to switch?
We're at a quorum. Okay, Bonnie, let me know if that's better. Can you hear me? Is that better? Okay. And I just did a quick head count, so I believe we are at a quorum. So I'd like to call this meeting to order, please. At this time, I'm going to invite Barbara Rook up to offer an opening prayer.
But I thank her for coming up with this prayer, made my decision to offer to do this much easier. This is called a prayer and thought for a new year, and we are entering into a new year in our church life. Loving God, we thank you for this past year with its positive moments and its more difficult ones. We thank you for the love we've received from family and friends and for the successes we have had at work and at home. We thank you also for the hard moments, the moments that we struggled with, the moments of challenge, the moments of uncertainty, the moments when we have been afraid for our safety and of those we love, the moments when we lost those dear to us. As we look forward to the next year, we ask for your grace and blessing. Give us health and strength. Give us faith and hope. Send us your Spirit. Give us peace with the choices we make. Grant us joy as we look ahead and discern the future. Most of all, give us the love that will guide us through whatever challenges we come across. Help us to walk beside each other with patience and forgiveness, putting your hands in the hands of your Son, Jesus. He guides us and strengthens us. He is always by our side. He gives us hope. He helps us see beyond the small now to the bigger picture and the wider dream, the dream you imagined for us by you, our Father, you who live in love forever and ever. Amen.
Spirit, there are many hands, but the same Lord. There are many works, but the same God who empowers them all. There are many gifts, but the same Spirit. There are many hands, but the same Lord. There are many works, but the same God who empowers them all. We won't be divided. We are a house united. We won't be church. Your children are my brothers and my sisters. We won't be divided. We are a house united. We won't be divided. We are a house united. We won't be divided. We are a house united. We won't be divided. We are a house united. We won't be divided. We are a house united. We won't be divided. We are a house united. United. We are a house united. United. We are a house united.
Thank you. So have you may noticed, this meeting already has a little bit of a different look and a little bit of a different feel. So welcome. Welcome to this meeting to review our year past and look forward to our future. We are here to celebrate our accomplishments, acknowledge our hard work, and envision what is to come. As a matter of business, the congregation will be asked to review and approve the 2023 budget to support our continued mission in the coming year. We will review highlights here, but detailed information has been made available to you in the annual report. Please take time to review it. Up front with me are several members of various committees of your church leadership. You may recall from our last congregational meeting in August that members of other groups are encouraged to help present information, and I'm here to help facilitate, but they're here for the details. As we discuss and review the 2023 budget, if you have comments or would like more information, they are here to help address that. A microphone or two has been set up in the center aisle. When I call for questions or comments, if you would like to speak, please come to the microphone. Please state your name so everyone knows who you are and so that our online listeners are aware as well. This will also help our recorder capture the meeting minutes more accurately. Please speak only for yourself, not for what you think others may think or feel. Once your comment or question has been addressed, please allow the next person to talk. Once everyone has had opportunity, if there are second questions or comments from the same person, we can allow time for that. For those of you joining online, if you have a question or comment you wish to share, please send an email to pastor@olmstedchurch.org. We'll be monitoring that email during the meeting, and if we receive messages, we will be sure to read them aloud for inclusion in the minutes, so that we can address them. That said, I'd like to move into old business, which is to approve the past meeting minutes. Minutes from the March 27th and August 28th meetings have been made available to you. Having had a chance to review them, I'd like to call if there's a motion to approve. Your name? Is there a second? Your name? Those in favor? Any opposed? Thank you. Minutes are approved. At this time, I'd like to invite Pastor Stephen Gower for a pastor's report.
Off when I was talking to everyone afterwards. So yeah, as our President Mary said, it's a little bit of a different feel this time around. There's so much that's been happening and so many great things to celebrate. I think we should take the time to do that. And we sang "If You're Happy and You Know It" during service, and I'm really hoping that that carries over into this because there's a lot of stuff and a lot of ministry that we've been doing that we should be happy about. Unfortunately, our tech isn't working quite right. We were hoping to cast this onto these screens so you won't see it, but those of us in person, you can see it here. And then, Natalie, if you want to zoom into this with that camera, you'd be able to use it for the online people too, for some of the stuff here. First, I am just very grateful for our current group of leaders and for the many of you who have served in leadership over the years. And I ask that if you are a current elected leader or if you have served as an elected leader in your time at this church, that you please stand so we might show you that we're happy for your service. We are the best church when we work best together, and we are constantly assessing and reassessing how we might be more transparent, aligned to best practices, and be accountable to God and to one another. One way that I push for better fluidity of movement in our communication and in our faith growth is to assist in seeing that all we do, every group that meets here, everything that we do, is a representation of our entire church. And everything that we do and all the discussions that we have and the decisions we make should align with our entire church vision and should be future-oriented in God's kingdom, and creating the best base for ministry for the leaders of tomorrow with all of the blessings that we've received from our leaders of the past and present. So my hope is that we can see a better, bigger, more unified vision for who we are and who God is calling us to be. And this last year has given us many blessings by God to celebrate and many opportunities to step up and to serve in 2023. So let's celebrate. We're going to celebrate God's presence in ourselves for the work that we have done. We began the year centered on this scripture from Isaiah. In Isaiah 43, we read, "Thus says the Lord, who makes a way in the sea, a path in the mighty waters, who brings out chariot and horse and army and warrior. They lie down, they cannot rise. They are extinguished, quenched like a wick. Do not remember the former things or consider the things of old. I am about to do a new thing. Now it springs forth. Do you not perceive it? I will make a way in the wilderness and rivers in the desert. The wild animals will honor me, the jackals and the ostriches, for I give water in the wilderness, rivers in the desert, to give drink to my chosen people, the people whom I formed for myself, so that they might declare my praise." As we celebrate what God has done in and through us, we will see that there has been some new movement, excitement, and proclamation of our faiths in the divine throughout 2022, which inspires the leadership and the direction of 2023. If you can remember all the way back to Lent last year, we did an entire church study on being a church member, and we still have some copies of this book. If you've lost yours or if you didn't go through it with us and you'd like to read it, it is a very good book, and it's pretty short, so you can read it in an afternoon. But we did this church study on being a church member to try and shift out of what one of the longtime members here called our old country club thinking into a dynamic faith that informs our actions as a church, by seeing that church in all manifestations isn't about serving any one of us individually. I touched on this, if you remember back then, by sharing some of the music that I really enjoy in service. Yeah. I was like, if it was really just about me, we'd have hip-hop all the time. But there's so much more. We see the joy in others who are worshiping in other ways, that it isn't about any one of us all the time. And we begin to see how we are part of a church that serves God and seeks ways to increase the faith and the number of families and peoples that participate in our life of faith. And in that process, in March, we voted to affirm who we are in this moment as a church and who we are striving to be, knowing that though our mission statement hadn't been changed in decades, we are encouraged to revisit this statement to best reflect who we are in our call to God. And so for now, in this moment, we affirmed unanimously that we are a family centered on Christ, committed to nurturing loving relationships, faithful stewards, and dynamic faiths, showing God's love for all. This guides us in all the work we do. We affirm that we strive to be Christ-centered, disciple-driven, and outreach-oriented in our structure and in our methods. And we proclaim again and again that God's love is for all, not just in words and in songs, but in actions and deeds and in our budget. In August, we voted on expanding our understanding of membership and emphasizing relationships. And this acknowledges that we have a robust online congregation and growing missions programs and Christian education opportunities, all of which are a part of our church. This example became a bit of news in ecumenical circles, and because it was requested from us, I've shared the language of our membership with the region of Ohio and the Christian Church Disciples of Christ and several churches in the Living Water Association who are trying to navigate an understanding of church community in an increasingly non-Sunday worship-only church. And in what ways are we that kind of church? Well, through our online presence, we've reached thousands of households. Over 3,000 unique visitors to our website from North and South America, Europe, Asia, and Africa. So we just need to get, Australia and Antarctica next year. Our site has nearly 6,000 sessions, with over 60% of them being experienced through a mobile device. Our church is with people as they walk through their lives. Our church is being carried with so many people and families. Our online worship added another 28 subscribers last year, bringing our YouTube subscriber count to 242. For perspective, First Congregational Church in Hudson, which is a very large, I think they have 11 pastoral staff, like a big church, has 261 subscribers. Christ United in Olmsted Falls, Berea has 56. Trinity Church in Olmsted Falls, which has a large young family population, has 145. Our online presence is outsized to our membership, which is fantastic news. Our neighbors to whom and with whom we spread the good news of God, they are global. Our church is global. We've been celebrating great stewardship of mission and growing our faiths. And I'd like for us to recognize that giving financially is a huge part of our faiths as well. It's possibly the most important indicator of what we truly find important in our world and how we live into our faiths. We've been blessed with the opportunity to apply for and have received at least 3 parts of our last 3 requests to the Harding Family Charitable Trust. So I want to take a second to point out how amazing it is that our own church members, the Harding sisters and family, established a charitable trust to help our community, and that they made the church a primary benefactor of that trust. But I'd also like to clear up a few things that I think might be misperceptions about how these grants work and how they come to be. I'm going to use some I statements here, and I will tell you, I don't like praising myself, but I've been encouraged lately to do it more, and so I want to walk us through some of this process. The very first time I heard about the Harding grants, and I asked Executive Council about them because I had been sitting in meetings, specifically some trustees meetings at the time, where we were talking about we have some major leaks in our roof, and we have a lift that doesn't work all the time, and that we lost community partnerships because the lift does not work all the time. And then I heard about this possibility, and so I asked what was necessary and needed to do this. And though the majority of leadership was encouraging, there were some that said, you can't do this, or you can't apply for that. And so my response was, give me the contact, and I'll contact them and say, here are our needs, what can we do? Because it had been 6 years since we had applied for a family charitable trust. I also found out that Kathy Henry and Kathy Higginbotham had worked on the previous ones, and so I contacted them and spoke with them and got their input on how to apply for that first one to cover some major updates that were needed. This was the time of COVID, and it was a time where we needed a new roof, a new lift, and we needed to update our audio video so that we could become a church that could reach into people's homes at a time when we couldn't leave our homes. And so we did apply for that one. And in addition to that, we also added about $60,000 in improvements to the organ because our musicians said, hey, if we're applying, can we add some stuff to the organ, including lifting it out of the pit and all of that stuff, right? And so we received $290,027. Now, the way these grants work is that not only do we fill out an application, but we are expected to meet the obligations of that grant within 1 calendar year. And we file a report. I file a report where I sign my name saying this is what we have done with these funds. And so we do have a timetable for using these funds. In the second year, there were other additional things that were needed, including updating some of the preschool area, continuing to update here. You notice that it's painted. There are just some things that have to be done over the course of time. The trustees have spoken about how the chancel area is going to be getting a new floor. If you look below you, you'll notice the tile is cracking and that needs to be redone underneath the pews, and a number of the pews need to be reattached for safety reasons too. And so all of that is covered in this grant. It was supposed to be done in a calendar year. My report was 30 pages long. explaining why we didn't meet those requirements. And yet still, we applied for another grant because in our process of doing all the work for the grant this past year, we discovered that a number of our drainage tiles are smashed outside and that our building isn't draining properly and that we have moisture buildup in our bottom level where we invite children almost every day of the week from our community to learn and to be loved on. And when we spoke with Melanie about this moisture thing, she said, "Oh, my office has always smelled like that." And so we applied to replace all of our drainage tile. And even though we haven't met those requirements of getting all of our projects done in the amount of time, the Harding Family Charitable Trust was gracious enough to say, we're going to approve this section of your new application because we recognize that this is a necessity, that the foundation needs to be waterproofed, that we need to have properly drained, all of our yard needs to drain properly. And so over the course of the years, with partnership with trustees, with executive council, with worship planning group, with Kathy and so many others, in a number of discussions that extend well beyond me writing the reports, we have applied for and received $791,027 for designated specific projects to make sure that our building is a building that can house ministry for many decades to come, which is an awesome thing and something worth celebrating. And so I think that's... Oh, I should also emphasize that in that second year grant, our musician came back and said, "Do you think we can apply to add a whole nother set of pipes?" And I said, "I'll put it as the last thing, so if they cut anything, that's what they cut." But they gave it to us. And so we'll get a whole nother additional set of pipes, and over the next 2 years, I believe almost all of our pipes will be taken, retuned, cleaned, and put back in, so the organ will be back too. As our musician says. We've also partnered with Generosity Plus to help us with best practices and continue to align ourselves with best accounting principles for nonprofits. And we brought in an outside bookkeeper in Jennifer Fuller at Viva LLC, and she's helping with transferring so much into QuickBooks Online and streamlining our reporting processes. Now, you might have noticed things like the new look to the budget, and that's part of the work of this. And here's something where I'm very proud of our leadership, especially the work of our Executive Council, Finance Committee, and Memorials and Endowments Committee. The teamwork, prayer, and ability to make good decisions to align us with best practice and accounting standards is admirable. Not all decisions are easy, and not all discussions are smooth, but we work together to best learn how to be great stewards. And our bookkeeper brought to us a concern at the end of October 2022. By our current up to that moment of cash basis accounting methods, it appeared that we should have been flush with funds, but our accounts weren't. And so she wanted to know what's going on and brought us all together to have a discussion on it in our finance committee. Well, we discovered that we had built up a rather large amount of committed funds, both donor designated and organizationally restricted over the years. And so we had to rectify this problem. And so at the end of 2018, hold on a second. At the end of 2018, 37% of our $46,000 in operating funds were funds that we had committed to specific purposes. And that year, our congregation had approved the use of $12,000 in investment earnings and moved all $12,000 into our operating accounts that year. At the end of 2019, 40% of our $54,000 in operating funds were funds we had committed to specific purposes. And that year, our congregation had approved the use of $18,000 in investment earnings and moved all $18,000 into the operating accounts. In 2020, 76% of our $80,000 in operating funds were funds we had committed to specific purposes. And that year, our congregation had approved the use of $24,000 in investment earnings and moved $0 into the operating accounts. In 2021, 100% of our $416,000 in operating funds, remember we started receiving grants. $416,000 in operating funds were funds we had committed to specific purposes. And that year, our congregation had approved the use of $24,000 in investment earnings and moved $10,000 into the operating accounts. On October 31st, 2022, 104% of our $340,000 in operating funds were funds we had committed to specific purposes. And last year, our congregation had approved the use of $24,000 in investment earnings and moved all $24,000 into the operating accounts by that point. So we essentially moved all of our commitments into our investments by not moving the funds to maintain all of our liabilities in our operating accounts. Now, this was just the result of our accounting methods in the moment and amassing rather large sums of committed funds over the years. And I think it kind of took a set of outside eyes to come in and help us kind of see this. And so to have Jennifer come in and start this conversation with us. So as we switched to accrual counting, we needed to move backward to reconcile our books in alignment with best practices for nonprofits. And as we've learned through our Bookkeeper and Generosity Plus, we went back to 2020 and 2021 and followed the votes of the congregation to move the $34,000 in earnings and then pay down the committed funds as much as possible with the practice of holding leadership accountable to no longer building up large amounts of committed funds. At the end of 2022, 94% of our $300,000 in operating funds were funds we had committed to specific purposes. Last year, our congregation, after all of this, our investment funds are down 4% from where they were at the end of 2018. Not ideal, but not terrible by any means. So I am grateful for the leadership to see this problem and rectify it in the process of reconciling our books and maintaining transparent procedures and best practices for nonprofit accounting. Moving forward, we will be proposing regular quarterly allocations based on 5% of endowed funds so as to meet the best practice of creating, quote, an irrebuttable presumption of prudence that is outlined in section 1715.53 of the Ohio Revised Code. So aligning ourselves with law and best practices in how we do our finances. So thank you all for doing all that work. Another great celebration and seeing our stewardship grow so much in this last year is from leaving legacy gifts to a living legacy gift. Our church has been blessed once again in 2022 and beyond. So last year, our own Ed Muckley, pictured here inside a flower. No smile? There it is. Pledged to pay for a large solar array installation. Unfortunately, the company that we contracted with suddenly and surprisingly folded under multiple lawsuits from the Iowa Attorney General's office and now subsequent states' Attorney General's office as well. Ed continues to pursue reimbursement of his funds, and amazingly, in this process, has still committed to pursuing this living legacy to our church with the passion that maybe others will be moved to install solar and help with climate justice. So we are still receiving bids from other companies, and in this process, we are also supporting Ed in any way that we can through the legal process and maneuvering of the closure of Moxie Solar. In 2022, we continued to live into being an immigrant welcoming congregation, especially through our refugee ministry. At the beginning of the year and through most of the summer, we housed the Paktia Walls, a family of 4 that came to us through a special immigration visa from Afghanistan. And today, Akbar, Maria, Ajmal, and Rana are living in an apartment in Rocky River, and Ajmal is attending high school and getting excellent grades, and Akbar has completed getting his CDL and is preparing to start driving commercial trucks in the spring. Through them, we also helped 2 other Afghan refugee families. And after they moved out, we formed a new group headed by Lynn Pace to clean and restock the apartment. And working with us together, and after a couple of frustrations with near move-ins, we welcomed the Vaziuk family in November. And they have been regular worshipers and active members of our community. And we are encouraged by their participation. And I got to have this wonderful experience that I've been wanting to share with you all for a while, but they're always here on Sunday. And I thought it would be weird to talk about them so much in front of them. But we got to meet one of their friends, Walter, who is Ukrainian himself, but is here and is a retired attorney and has been helping them with the Ukrainian refugees with a number of legal things. And I gave him a tour of the church, and he wanted to see around, and we were actually in the sanctuary when he just stopped and said, "You more than say the words, you do them. No church does them, but you do them." It's just amazing the impact that our congregation is having on so many families and so many people around the world. So thank you all for that. And our largest community outreach has been and continues to be our Olmsted Community Preschool. We are one entity in ministry, mission, and legally. The church and preschool are one. And under the direction of Melanie Reynolds, our preschool not only survived COVID, but is flourishing. We've updated the space in ways that have amazed our families. Me getting to be a preschool parent this year, they all know who I am now, but at first they didn't. All the parents didn't. And I got to hear them talking about all the wonderful updates and how amazing it was and how they went to school here when they were in preschool and they thought it would always be the same color yellow. And now it's and now it's so clean and inviting and just amazing spaces so we've updated the space in ways that have amazed our families, made the space more welcoming, more accommodating and useful, and frankly, has made us more competitive with the other preschool options in our areas. Every classroom has touch screens, and through Melanie's work of applying for grants and maintaining excellence in our teachers and updating their trainings, the preschools received over $150,000 in additional state grants for updates and maintenance. What a blessing for our children and the children of our community, and what an impactful way to make a mark on these families. I continue to try to be present with our students and staff, and am enjoying being recognized by the little ones as Pastor Stephen throughout the community, so I thank you for inviting me in to be able to do that as well. Faith Formation, under the leadership of Kathy Henry and Janet Bing, has made huge strides in 2022. VBS was a blast with Katie Shalino as directing, and I just heard that you're going to do it again this year. Just before service, I was told, so that's awesome. And so many volunteers that helped out. The Sunday after, we had amazing worship with many of the families, and I'm encouraged to see the engagement. A huge thanks to all who helped with the cookout that Sunday, and really a big thanks to all of the people who help out with fellowship on so many Sundays. Thank you for all of the fellowship time and coffee hours. And we're making good examples on our children because our children are some of the best evangelists in the church. As they invite their friends and encourage one another to be a part, on Christmas Eve, I got to experience some of the church's children embrace others upon their arrival. They ran up to them as they came to the door and they said, "We haven't seen you in a while. It's so great that you're here," which was just so cool, and they were hugging each other. It's happening in youth group too. I've been meeting with them once a month to have open discussions on faith, scripture, and life. And they too have invited friends and continue to be an integral and impressive part of our online faith community. As a matter of fact, 2 of them are running our online stuff right now, so thank you, Justin and Natalie, for helping out in that way. We hired a nursery coordinator in Taylor, and it allows for young families to come and to be more present in worship, and we're seeing the use of the nursery more often. We've had several baptisms and welcomed new families into our faith life over the last year. And not only that, but they start to become involved. They start singing in the choir and wanting to be a part and be present throughout the church. And through a connection of some previous churches, I knew of a church that had hand chimes that were sitting around and not being used. And so through the generosity of people giving to Memorial's discretionary funds and M&E discretionary funds, we were able to purchase the chimes. They will officially be ours this Wednesday as the check is delivered to Grace United Church of Christ in Massillon for us to have that set of Suzuki chimes that we saw on Christmas Eve and that were used again today. And we're grateful for Kim and helping out with that and teaching our children music. I told you there's lots, and we could keep going. There is lots to celebrate. And all of what we celebrated in 2022 and so much more, it continues into 2023. And I could speak for hours on the good and great that is happening here, and the blessings of so many families and individuals who have gotten us here, the saints who have paved the way. And of course, I could speak about the power of Jesus and his call for us to be the body for weeks. So if you want to hear that, come back next Sunday and we'll just continue. But we are also here to discuss and vote on our 2023 ministry plan. You've undoubtedly noticed it's in a different format, emphasizing two things. One, we are a united church, and two, the congregation should see and vote on the entirety of the church budget. You'll notice that on previous years, there are sections that say not reported. Those were not reported to the congregation in those years, but most, if not all, had income or expenses to them. You'll also see that we have all income coming into our church, all expenses going out, and the side-to-side movement of funds into and out of the general account. With all of that set up, I'd like to celebrate and hand it off to Von Rockhold, the chair of our finance committee, for someone want to give a drum roll, please? The presentation of our 2023 budget.
Well, I'll try not to repeat too much of the ground that Pastor Stephen covered, although that was quite a bit of my notes. So
Sorry.
So I'm going to be editing as I go along, so maybe a little rough, I promise. I'll try my best. First of all, the Finance Committee is represented by some of the elected leaders, including Mary Gollier and our Vice President, Katie Gross. And then along with that, Pastor Stephen and Nicole Humphrey, our financial recorder, are also members. And then we have 3 at-large members voted to the committee every 2 years. And so fortunately for support today, I'm very happy to have Michelle Mano and Cheryl Subjenics, along, of course, with Melanie Reynolds, our preschool coordinator. And we kind of compose the Finance Committee, so that's who the group currently is with that. We do want to begin our presentation with a huge thank you to the Olmsted Community Church congregation for their generous support of our church and its missions in 2022. The overall financial support for the church, and in particular for our missions projects, increased by a wide margin this past year. And that includes your financial support for the Lots Creek, both retaining wall project and the flood relief project. Also for the Cleveland Angels, for the UNICEF and MedWish efforts in the Ukraine, and the Refugee Assistance Program through our church's wider mission. Beyond financial support, I also feel certain that our donations of goods to the Brenda Glass Foundation, the Christian in Action Program, the Furniture Bank, and the Caring Sharing Sacks all receive tremendous support from our church through both donations and your volunteer talents. And we cannot thank you enough for all the things you have done in 2022. Now, certainly, all of us prayed and hope that some of these emergency funds, the need for these emergency funds, will diminish in the coming year. But of course, it seems like that's going to be very difficult already. I mean, when you see the number of victims is just increasing drastically in both Syria and Turkey from the earthquakes in that region, I mean, it's devastating news. And I'm sure there's going to be a number of projects undertaken to support the people, the families, or survivors in those areas. And so there will be further needs this coming year, and it's a certainty now. Beyond that, I think one of the biggest transitions was, I remember for years kind of hearing that the church, financially, what we do is look at the tithes and offerings, and that we try to keep the lights on and pay the payroll. And that's not really what our church has become. Our church is a dynamic group that really tries to live to our faith. And we live to our faith through various projects and various mission work. And our mission statement clearly says we're a family centered on Christ that shares God's love with all. And at Olmsted Community Church, we're trying to live out that mission. And the guiding principle of it is we believe that is what our church truly is in all of its facets. Financially, the mission is reflected in so many ways, including the glorious facility we have here, but one that is unfortunately aging. It's an aging building, and it does have a number of problems. And to be quite frank, I don't know where we would be if Pastor Stephen hadn't undertaken getting those grants from the Harding Family Charitable Trust. I mean, I can't tell you how much we appreciate your leadership and taking the initiative on that project nearly as soon as your feet hit the ground. So thank you, Pastor Stephen. And in 2023, as he mentioned, we've actually gotten additional grants to shore up the foundation of the church and solve some of the drainage problems that we are having. And I'm sure Melanie will probably be as thrilled with that news as anyone. So, and that takes me to one of the most enduring and important components of Olmsted Community Church is the preschool. The preschool's probably touched more individuals, more families than any singular undertaking that Olmsted Community Church has ever had. As a congregation, we need to understand that the financial impact the preschool has in both income and expense, and to present the information to you, the congregation, the people that support this effort, and show you how that intersects with our ability to maintenance funds, with the trustees, with the work on the HFTC grants. They're all part of Olmsted Community Church. And it did take some time for us to catch up to that idea and to catch up and have our accounting started. But we started that process in earnest in 2022. And as Pastor Stephen said, I think certainly sometimes you need some outside eyes to come in and bring a fresh perspective to it. And what was a frustration in not being able to relieve our longtime treasurer, Bruce, from those duties which he desperately wanted to move on from, and to replace him with a volunteer treasurer. We were just having very difficult finding someone that was capable and talented enough to fulfill that mission, and we didn't have any real volunteers, so it was a huge frustration. But we have turned that frustration into a blessing, I believe, by bringing Jennifer in, who is very familiar with the QuickBooks technology. She's a master instructor in it, along with being our bookkeeper and a bookkeeper for several other businesses. And she has really helped us transition to the QuickBooks accounting and to see the broader mission of the church reflected financially. And I think that's what you're going to see now in the radical changes we've made to the 2023 budget. This is the first year, but the changes actually have all started in earnest in 2022. We're through a lot of it. It's not perfect yet. We'll continue to make changes, I'm sure, but we do promise you that we believe we're on the right track with that, and we do have ambitious goals to continue that process. So to wrap up my portion of this, while we've made a number of changes to the budget presentation for 2023, I can promise that we'll continue to offer our best efforts towards using the best practices possible, to be as efficient yet transparent as possible in integrating new practices and methodologies, and to make sure that we can possibly show the entire picture of Olmsted Community Church through our actions and deeds. I want you to know that, again, your contributions are sort of the engine that drive the train, and they will be handled responsibly and thankfully to serve our church and its mission. And so with that, we would be happy to answer any questions that we can in regard to the 2023 budget.
Hello? There we go. So as I had said earlier, there's some mics set up in the middle, so if anybody has questions or comments, please feel free to come up. Thank you all for the information you've shared for the presentation. See people heading up. If you have a question, remember to state your name. Natalie, are these mics on? Hold on.
One second, Barb. I'm going online to be able to hear you.
For example, last year, I noticed that you moved an extra $38,000 out of M&E, and I'm unable to follow that in your 2023 actual. I don't see it reflected.
Okay, well, it actually, the first part of it was inserted into 2021 actuals. You'll see under endowment, there's $24,000 reported there. And that $24,000 was the big chunk of that $38,000. And the remainder of it was transferred to the books, I believe, for 2020, is that correct? Which was the other year that we had not transferred the full amount that had been approved in the budget. So it is reflected over the 3-year period to balance our books.
Okay, also, I have a limited accounting background, and I was the financial recorder here and on the budget committee previously.
And thank you, by the way, for your service.
We're changing our financial statements the way it's being presented. I think we should stay with the old way. I think it better reflects our income, our expenses, and where we're at in terms of, do we need more money to, pay the salaries? I think this current is confusing.
Well, and certainly, you are very entitled to your opinion. I do believe that we pick up all of those numbers, though, and have them in the current accounts. And I believe we can transfer, we can still, like you talked about salaries, we do have under expenses, church staff salaries and benefits. And then on the back of this budget sheet, under expenses, you look again at church staff salaries and benefits, and we have who's included there in that line.
But on a monthly basis, or is this?
Well, on a month, this is the annual budget. On a monthly basis, we do look at those reports.
Finance Committee reviews those reports every month.
But, so on a monthly basis, will we see the old income and expenses report? Is that what we're gonna see monthly?
Well, it's updated. It's a new report. We're looking at new reports, and we have most of this year, I believe.
So every month, Finance Committee reviews that month's finances. They can pull up any report they want to compare to the past year.
So what's gonna be reported in the bridge is what I guess I'm trying to ask. Will we see?
So we're voting on an annual budget, which is different than monthly financial reports, and has been in previous years as well. The simplified budget is presented at these meetings for voting on congregation, but monthly financials are reported every month, and have been as well.
I'm not sure if, Natalie, can you turn on Stephen's mic?
Oh, it's my fault.
Oh, never mind. It was him.
My bad.
Teenager did mess up that time.
This is an annual budget, which is different than monthly financial reports. You can see that in the annual report, there's the annual report. The new monthly financial reports will still show every account that you're looking at, but will be, you'll see them this week, actually. You'll see the first version in this coming bridge. It'll be pretty similar to what you see as the end-of-year reports, just slightly different categories to cover all income and all expenses. And the category of allocations, because we were recording the movement of funds from one account to another as income, and that's technically not income, and it creates issues with our bookkeeping, especially in QuickBooks.
Okay, I have just one last question. The money we're taking out of M&E, is that coming from restricted funds or non-restricted funds?
Yvonne, can you answer that?
Yes. No, it does not come from the principal. And that is something that you can't
Well, I
touch.
know there's restricted funds and semi-restricted funds and then unrestricted funds. So you're saying it will not be coming from restricted funds?
The restricted funds are I believe, the endowment principal. No, that $38,000, as you said, did not come from the endowment principal. It came from earnings and also from new contributions.
So are
we
we
had
continue to take additional money out of M&E?
in our budget we are in our budget we're asking for $25,000 in 2023. And that'll come out quarterly.
That will be from the interest from M&E?
Yes.
Yes, I'm sorry, I couldn't hear it well, but they were telling me, yes, it does come from the earnings and interest.
Thank you.
Thank you. Pastor, if you can check to make sure there's nothing coming in online, emails, because we had said people could.
Nothing
Okay,
so
thank you.
far. I'll refresh just to make sure. Barb, also, just to point out about like the restricted funds, like there's the associate pastor fund also in the endowments, and you'll notice that last year the congregation approved $44,000 to be moved out of M&E, but $20,000 of that was actually those restricted funds, which is why you don't see that total $44,000 amount, because we couldn't move those because we aren't paying an associate pastor right now. And so that just came out of both. It also came out of the expenses, projected expenses for this next year, because with the current state of the church, not just our church, but the church at large, seeking an associate unfortunately, is not really realistic in this moment. So yeah, the Memorials and Endowments Committee is making sure that restricted funds aren't being misused.
Other comments or questions? Okay. That said, having heard the presentations, having had a chance to review the 2023 budget, I'd now like to call for a motion to approve the 2023 budget as presented. State your name. Bill Henry. Is there a second? Jane? Thank you.
My mom,
Jane.
Jane Duffy.
Jane Duffy.
My mom.
She doesn't have a mic. I apologize.
Or Bruce Carter.
I saw Jane's hand first. Any further comments or questions? Okay.
Can we just pause for a minute
Sure.
just to give people a chance to write if they want?
Sure. Yeah. And then are you setting up online? How do?
There will be a QR. For the voting portion, there will be a QR code. Everyone here can vote, just vote. But if you're joining us online, there'll be a QR code that you can scan, and then we'll be able to see the results from a Google form. But I figured if we just wait just a minute for this discussion in case anyone joining online is writing an email, just make sure. I just have a feeling that as soon as you call for a vote, there's going to be a question, so I just want to make
The joys of a hybrid meeting. Thank you. We're good? Okay. Those in favor of the 2023 budget for Olmsted Community Church as presented, please raise your hand or say aye. Aye. Give the online voters a chance. I'm waiting for him to tell me online is ready to go to the next. Should I call for opposed?
Are we allowed to share this, Tara? Will you text me? Yeah, okay. Just want to make sure. Another celebration about our refugee families is that our first refugee family, Maria, is due to have a baby.
Oh.
So just a cool, yeah.
Can I call for opposed?
Cool thing. Yeah, I don't see.
Okay, any opposed? One. Any online opposed? Okay. Motion carries.
Wait,
Oh,
before you say that.
Okay.
I know of at least one person that said they were going to be joining online, and I don't see a vote, so I just want to make sure this works.
Okay.
Has anyone written in the comments about anything?
No, Joe's been checking.
No, nobody has.
Oh, here we go. It is working. I didn't submit one, but yeah, it's working.
Okay, so everybody online has had a chance if they
In
wanted?
favor, yes.
Okay, so the motion carries. Thank you all very much. Just want to take a moment to thank everyone who made this meeting possible, to thank all of our staff and all of our volunteers over the course of the year. Our next meeting will be held March 26th, and that's where we will elect new lay leadership. If you have an interest in any of the upcoming vacancies, please take a moment to speak with anybody on Executive Council, with Pastor Stephen, with Vice President Katie Gross, about what that commitment means, and discuss your interest in it. At this time, I'll invite Katie, and Josh. Oh, actually, I'm going to ask for a motion to adjourn first, and then we'll have a closing prayer and song. Is there a motion to adjourn? This time I saw Bruce first. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Joe seconds. Joe Duffy?
I second it.
Those in favor? Aye. Anybody want to keep going? Okay, meeting adjourns. Pastor Stephen, Katie, and Josh will offer us a closing.
So the work that we do is worshipful work, and the way that we do our stewardship campaign is that after we put in our pledge cards, we circle around and we see the church that we are as we celebrate that. And so we're going to end this meeting the same way too. So if we want to circle around, feel free to hold hands or not. That's up to you. But we're going to sing, for closing, we're going to sing one verse of Blessed Be the Tie That Binds. We don't have to circle up. If you just want to reach across, that might be quicker. We'll just make sure we're a connected church.
Blessed be the tie that binds our hearts in Christian love, our fellowship of kindred minds is like to that above.
Thank you all. And as we go, please affirm that God's love is for all, and don't just say the words, live them. Amen. Thank you all.
This is awful.
Hey, you didn't have to talk first.
I know, but yeah, now it makes it not work. You being uncomfortable.
Oh, Natalie, you can shut off all the mics.